Hello, everybody. This is No One Unscripted, and this is the first episode of the Outside the Matchbox series. This is a huge leap of faith for me for many reasons. If you'll notice the headline or the image of the episode is suspended. My account on Twitter has been suspended, and so I will be focused on getting my word out to all of you through YouTube because that is the only avenue left to me. Uh, I have appealed my decision, and if they get back to me, I'll know exactly what um, their decision is. Either way, I am committed to not being dissuaded by um, what happened, and once the determination is made, I will discuss it further. Should my suspension be permanent? Um, but I will start today by talking about certain topics, and I am going to commit to doing this um, every day for at least an half an hour, an hour, or as long as it takes to cover the topics of the day. Um, my topics will focus primarily on American law and society and politics, much like my other videos have. I will try my best to be a little bit more structured and concise. Uh, the match outside the Matchbox series, because I've decided to use Matchboxes to write notes down about what to talk about, and they're all written outside the Matchbox, except for one. So let me start off by talking about Judge Cannon. The latest development in Judge Cannon's um, can of worms is that she decided she wanted to intervene in the special master review, presumptively because Donald has raised objections to Judge Deary's directions in how to go about the process, the review process. Uh, at point is the ask by Judge Deary that Donald Trump um, show proof of the claims that FBI planted evidence in Mar-a-Lago, and also uh, his claim that he declassified the documents that were recovered from Mar-a-Lago. Uh, Now, Judge Deary set the deadline for for September 30th, which would be today. But Judge Cannon has come out and said that the deadline set doesn't need to be followed. That Donald Trump doesn't have to follow that deadline, and she has extended the review for, I believe, 3 more weeks or so. I only glanced over the latest court document. Now, that she's micromanaging her order of a special master review. This whole thing is still on very shaky ground because, again, the appeal for the entire case that DOJ appealed to the 11th Circuit is still pending. The 11th Circuit approved the partial stay of that the DOJ asked of the approximately 100 classified documents that the DOJ said did not belong with even the special master, let alone let alone plaintiff in this case, Donald Trump, his attorney, who would have had access to these classified documents had the 11th Circuit uh, affirmed Judge Cannon's order, which the 11th Circuit did not. It, in many ways and categorically, rejected Judge Cannon's opinion and her ruling. In adherence to that ruling, Judge Cannon went ahead and amended her ruling to comply with the 11th Circuit's order, in a sense, by rendering the need to appeal the 11th Circuit's order kind of moot, but not really, because if Donald wanted, he could appeal. It's up to the Supreme Court of whether they would take the appeal, which I don't believe they would. But I believe that Donald at this point has figured out that that is not the way to go. The way to go would be to go back to Judge Cannon and um, influence her into uh, interfering and micromanaging with the special master review so as to uh, keep it keep uh, up with all of Donald's demands, and also to not let Judge Deary be able to do an impartial and comprehensive job. Uh, the silver lining in all of this is that Donald Trump has to pay for the special master review, and I assume that Donald Trump has to pay for it, um, even the extension. So that's where we are. All this time, the DOJ gets to review and continue their investigation. The DOJ got their grant of partial stay, so the classified documents will not be made available to Judge Deary for the special master review or to plaintiff's counsel. And so the investigation and the national security assessment, they are ongoing currently. I believe Donald's purpose of having Judge Cannon interject and micromanage the special review process is the publicity, is the corrupting influence over the special review process to make it become almost a case in favor of Donald. It is at this point so far reaching in its aberration from what is uh, American jurisprudence. There is no to say that it's unprecedented or there's no precedent for it. It's almost an understatement. Uh, it's an absurd idea, and uh, Judge, the 11th Circuit has been exceedingly polite, and so has the DOJ in its uh, replies, and then the 11th Circuit in its order of saying that this in no way, excuse me, this in no way falls within the norms of our justice system. But here we are, and it's ongoing. I'm gonna take a drink break. I see that there are a couple of people here to support me, and I really appreciate you. Um, if you are chatting, I won't be able to chat. I will cover these topics and then I will get to any questions that you may have. Uh, I would really appreciate it that if you would like and subscribe to my channel and like this video if you like the content. And because I have to at this point come out and ask for your support in the sense of a like and a subscribe, because Twitter has suspended me. My reach has gone down substantially, and it is not for my reach that I'm concerned. Uh, it is for the information getting out, and whoever is listening to be able to be on the page where the most current information and analysis that I can provide from my perspective of a lay citizen and an active citizen. Because as President Obama said, the most important job is that of the citizen. And every single person who comes here and listens comments, likes, subscribes, shares. They are, you are part of that process of connecting and getting the word out. So I really appreciate all of you. Thank you so much. So the next topic that I'd like to cover is the January 6th committee, the insurrection and any developments that have new developments that have come out of it. One of the things that I tweeted about a lot was after Representative Riggleman's book came out. One part of it where we found out that Donald Trump Jr. was the first person to text message Mark Meadows about the fake elector scheme, and that was 2 or 3 days after Donald lost the election. So in the first week after November 3rd, and that I find to be significant because Donald Trump also had Dan Scavino text his "will be wild" tweet. Now I don't know if Donald's staff regularly tweets out his tweets for him, or did at least when he had a Twitter account, but or whether he does it himself or not. But that particular tweet, Dan Scavino tweeted that one out, and we find out now that from the records that Mr. Riggleman had access to, the first person who talked about the fake elector scheme was Donald Trump Jr. to Mark Meadows. Donald made his own son a patsy, which should tell you where and how far he's willing to go to shield himself from liability. You know, even though his son is 40 years younger than him and he's an old man, and at the end of his life versus Donald Trump Jr.'s, most of his life is, the better half of his life is still ahead of him. Now, the second development, and I'm going to try and be as cut and dry here as possible, simply because I don't want to get into any more sort of violative words on social media where the big, the big brother is going to come and arbitrarily regulate. To which I have to say, YouTube is really good about that compared to other platforms. Then the second development that I want to talk about is talk about Roger Stone saying that forget the elections, go straight for the violence. Now, Roger Stone has been a fixture in all of the seditious work that has been ongoing for the last, as long as it has been ongoing. Roger Stone had bodyguards who were oath keepers when Roger Stone was visiting DC, and two of those oath keepers are currently in pretrial detention for seditious conspiracy. Roger Stone also was at the Freedom Plaza rally before January 6th, where he talked about godless and godly, namely claiming that Donald and his supporters were godly and everybody else was godless, turning reality on its head and perpetuating lies and getting Donald Trump connected to extremist groups like the Oath Keepers. Roger Stone's hand is in all of these things. So to find out that he said those words is just confirmation of his state of mind, which goes along with his actions. Next is Ginni Thomas. Ginni Thomas has finally talked to the January 6th committee, and reportedly, according to Chairman Benny Thompson, Ginni Thomas has said that she still believes the 2020 election is stolen. I don't understand this. It would take me a little bit more time to understand this. So, that is a big lie. The fact that somebody would say that the 2020 election was stolen is the big lie. It's the lie that caused the January 6th insurrection. It is the lie that continues to sow discord at all levels of government, from federal to state to local. It is the lie that is causing sheriffs to come out against the Constitution. It is upending the lives of countless people. It has put our country on edge. And that is the big lie that Ginni Thomas goes to the January 6th committee to confirm that she continues to believe in. And Ginni Thomas was that person who was connected to John Eastman, the architect of the fake elector scheme, who was connected to Mark Meadows, who was the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, who incidentally happened to be the only justice who dissented in the Trump v. Thompson case. And short break, you may be noticing me going like this. That's because my 115-pound dog over there is chewing on his bone and gnawing and making all kinds of sounds. And this is an exercise in such patience and restraint and I don't know what. Anyway, so the third thing I'd like to talk about in reference to January 6th committee is there's no point in getting Trump to the committee. He will plead the fifth. There's no point in having or hoping that he would cooperate. He's not that kind of a person. He never has been. I don't know what you believe, that he's going to grow conscience now. That's just not going to happen. And to do that would be delaying the committee's time. It would just be more delayed. And there's no need for that. At this point, since the House has already passed the law that was recommended by Representative Lofgren and Representative Cheney, and Senate is getting closer to passing their own, it would be the most prudent thing to do to present the case to the American people with at least one more, if not two more, hearings about what new information the committee has uncovered, then turn the information along with its report and recommendations and formal criminal referral to the Department of Justice, so the Department of Justice can then supplement their ongoing investigations and grand jury that has been impaneled for the sake of January 6th, to supplement this information that the committee sends over in its entirety. And then I believe Merrick Garland will be in the strongest position to prosecute a former president. Because, mind you, in reference pertaining to January 6th, the Supreme Court in Trump v. Thompson allowed the National Archives to release the documents to January 6th, which was assent by the third Article 3 branch of government, the Supreme Court. The Article 1 branch of government is conducting this committee investigation and review of a former Article 1 executive. And the present former Article 2 executive of the president. The Article 2 of the Constitution vests power to the president. Article 1 is Congress. Article 3 is the courts, the judiciary. So the Supreme Court has already assented. Congress is conducting the investigation. Therefore, Congress is the herald in all of this. And now the Congress needs to send the criminal referral over to the current Article 2 incumbent president's administration's DOJ, so the DOJ can supplement it in their investigation, and then the three branches of government together in assent on the topic of uh, January 6th, what happened there and what should happen, can move forward in holding Donald Trump accountable. That would be the government's strongest case against Donald Trump. And this is a principle that I learned from my constitutional law professor, that, when certain things, one is that when the president of the United States has congressional approval and the Supreme Court's approval in something, their power is at its peak, its zenith. When it doesn't, when it is working only by executive order, the Article 2 branch of government, president's power, is at its lowest. And most of the time, we operate somewhere in between. And that applies to every other branch of government. If there is, there's a case like Dobbs v. Jackson, and this is sort of a tangent about overturning Roe versus Wade. That case, the Supreme Court is the one who has overreached in taking away individual rights. But because they have gone against what was law based on their own precedent, and after that laws based on that, now their response of balancing, checking the Supreme Court is for the federal government to codify Roe v. Wade, for the federal government to, as much as it can, continue to provide for reproductive care within the frameworks of Dobbs v. Jackson, because Dobbs applies rational basis scrutiny, which is why I believe that total, complete bans on abortion will not stand even the constitutional muster of Dobbs v. Jackson. So now the Article 1 and Article 2 branches of government can go ahead and draft a law and sign it into law and supersede the Supreme Court. Now that law will have judicial review and it can be taken to the court, and the court will have to determine whether it passes constitutional muster. But that is the process of how our checks and balances work. So in this case, in the investigation of January 6th, DOJ is conducting an investigation. The Article 2 branch of government is conducting an investigation. And the Article 1 branch of government is conducting an investigation on the same topic, January 6th. The Article 3 branch of government, the Supreme Court, has given the Article 1 branch of government, Congress, permission to investigate this by allowing the National Archives to turn over documents to the January 6th committee. That's the Article 3 branch of government and the Article 1 branch of government. Now, that order doesn't reach to DOJ's investigation, mind you. The Supreme Court didn't give DOJ permission over these documents. It gave Congress permission over these documents. So when Congress drafts its report and filed its recommendation and formal criminal referrals, when it turns over the documents from the first branch of government as part of a formal criminal referral, it will be carrying over the Supreme Court's assent in this case onto this Article 2 branch of government of the presidency and the DOJ. And at that time, the DOJ in its hand will have the investigative conclusions of its own investigation, independent of the Supreme Court and Congress's investigation that was ongoing. And then it'll have that information together. And it'll take all of that information together, put the weight of all three branches of government together, and then make a step towards holding Donald Trump accountable. That is the strongest case that the president of the United States can have, because the Article 2 branch of government is the president. He's the executive branch, and the DOJ is part of the executive branch. There has been a lot of debate about whether it should be, and should be or not, whether it's somewhere in the middle. It is probably the most aloof and floating of all of the executive branch departments, but it is still the executive branch because the president is the one who is authorized to enforce the laws of the land, and the Department of Justice with the FBI and the U.S. attorneys offices across the country, they are the one that investigate, prosecute, and enforce the laws that are passed and signed into law by Congress and the president. All this is very maybe confusing, maybe a lot, but it is important to understand that why this it is important for the January 6th committee to make that formal criminal referral. So now the last thing about the January 6th committee is that because of Hurricane Ian, they had to postpone their hearing, and I don't know exactly when they will have their hearing next. Currently, my Twitter account is suspended and it's only in read-only mode. So, excuse me, I haven't been able to see. I haven't seen anything yet, but I will be able to see it, and I'll let you know about that. But in the meantime, go to the January 6th committee YouTube page and go over those hearings if you haven't already. If you have, and if you want to go over them again for good measure, please do so while we wait for the ninth hearing. And uh, if you don't want to go through those hearings, which are at least 2 hours long, then I have reviews that are in the Utopia playlist that have both long episodes and short episodes that give you an update of what's going on, both for January 6th and for the Special Master Review and the Mar-a-Lago search. Okay, now on to the third topic. And before I do that, I want to thank you all. Now there are 5 of you. Thank you so much. Um, Please, if you like the content, please like, subscribe, and share. I have never been this aggressive with asking somebody to like, share, and subscribe on YouTube, because it has never been my central purpose to gain an audience. It has just been to get the word out. But since Twitter has suspended and is pending appeal on my account there, I can't get the word out over there. And so if you like and if you subscribe, if you share, it gets YouTube to put my content to other people who may be interested in it. So I would really appreciate it. And now, the third topic I want to talk to you about is Hurricane Ian. Hurricane Ian has swept through Southwest Florida, and it has devastated Southwest Florida. Major parts of Florida are underwater. It has strengthened again, and I haven't checked the radar and the weather map in the last 2 hours, so I don't know exactly where it is right now, but it has gone through Florida, that peninsula right there, and um, regained strength as a hurricane. Mind you, Fiona happened a couple of weeks ago. So as of right now, Puerto Rico, Cuba, and at least a third of Florida is inundated and underwater. And I was watching a Morning Joe episode of this lady who was describing the horrifying experience that she had, and her taking care of her husband who has stage 4 cancer, and she broke an arm, and she was so strong and so resilient, and And she was standing there with the water bottle and talking to the reporter and describing this harrowing experience that would make people listening to her shudder. And she was doing it with, and you could see the trauma that she experienced, and she was ready to go back and take care of her husband. And that is the kind of uh, humanity and human being that this world is worth living in. It's I commend her and the humility that she had. And I am sure that there are countless stories around not just the Gulf Coast and the Gulf region, the Gulf of Mexico region, but also other parts of the world where there was another typhoon, which is a sort of a warm water hurricane that went through, or a cyclone. There's so many of them that went through the Philippines and then Taiwan, and is sort of like devastating these areas, inundating them underwater, people being displaced by the millions. You have Pakistan, where a third of the country is still underwater. It's horrifying. And you know the stress that this is putting on the governments, the stress that this is putting on the migrant crisis. A lot of the migrant crises are exacerbated by these storms, these massive, devastating storms that destroy everything that anybody has ever lived for, anybody has ever worked for. And so they have no other option but to pick up what they can carry and move. And it is exacerbated by things like wars and dictatorships that are ravaging the world. Happens because of famines caused by droughts from these massive changes in our weather patterns that's happening and has been happening for the better part of the last 50 years or so. And people have been warning about it, and no one has listened enough to be able to not be here where we are today. And this year, where I am in the world, we didn't get hit by a cyclone, get by a hurricane, but who knows? Next year we might be. You know, the devastating impact of Hurricane Ian and these other storms and these wildfires and these droughts is going to have a snowball effect on the world's reserves, on food reserves, on medicine and resources, because people will get more sick because they will not have the right foods. They will be more stressed. It will all exacerbate, it will compound. And when you add to that far right or extremist ideology, and even I would say far left, because in one of my I'm not both sidesing this. There's what I'm saying. Please listen. I talked about in one of my episodes about the students from Democratic Society and the Weather Underground. It was a fractional. It was a militant movement. It is militarizing, or it is creating an antagonistic environment. It is allowing the opposite side to be more violent, and we have to be very careful to not be militants ourselves when we say that Donald Trump and what MAGA and QAnon and what these people believe in is bunk. We have to be sure that we can have the compassion to understand when somebody finally says that they were duped, or if by MAGA, QAnon, and Donald Trump. We have to be able to give them at least a chance by showing them the truth, to be able to have a real debate with them. Because it is, after all, Americans who are fighting Americans here, and it is the Civil War was so in your face and blatant. This is excuse me, this is a different era. This is a different war. This is a war of ideologies. This is a war that transcends the musket and the gun, and the guns are part of it now because it has reached an extreme point. It has reached a point where this division has started to peek its way into the rungs of power, and thereby threaten our republic. And that's why the 2022 elections are so important. And maybe tomorrow I'll talk about the elections. One of these days I sure will. So the next topic I want to discuss briefly is the whole books thing. It's like one of the weirdest things is like watching. On one side you have the right saying burn the books, and then you have the right coming up with their own set of books, and then you have reporters coming out with more books. And I love books. I mean, I'm dyslexic and reading is a nightmare, but I mean, I carry my books around everywhere. What little I've been able to read without going nuts, I love books. But really, if these books have any sort of legal importance, then they should be talked about. If they have historical importance, can we wait? Can we wait until the prosecution happens? Can we wait until the indictment happens? Like, why are we so impetuous, and why are we so um, um, why are we jumping the gun on getting all these scoops about how terrible he was? I mean, he was terrible. Come on, we don't know that. He's treasonous, he's seditious, he's criminal. But we need to focus on what we know from the January 6th committee, DOJ, and all the other sources, the news sources that are reporting on the events that happened that were attacks on our democracy, because those are still ongoing. And until we do that, we are distracting ourselves from the real harm that is happening to our country. We are joking about the sedition rallies Donald has. We are joking about these absurd fallacies that Kash Patel is publishing with his children's books to inundate children with false narratives. As a own the libs because there are same-sex couples in children's books in schools. They're not the same. They're false equivalencies right there. One of them is how people love and live, and it is bringing that into the mainstream. The other one is taking a lie that caused an insurrection and that continues to corrode and eat away at the foundations of our republic, and turning it into a false history, a false narrative to then teach to children. One is a type of family unit. The other is a propaganda publication. One is display of how other families and diversity applies to everyday life and to your classmates and to people who you will end up growing up and working with and living around and being friends with. And the other one, which is Kash Patel's children's book, is taking the seditious lie that caused the death of 5 police officers and one of Donald Trump's own supporters, and twisting that into a false narrative to then teach their kids of the lie that the 2020 election was stolen, which it was not. It is depraved, it is seditious, it is subversive. And I don't understand how, you have on one hand people burning books in the same cohort where the other books that are coming out are propaganda. So they're replacing the books that have actual historical value, that have actual pedagogical value, and replacing them with an alternate history. We've seen this happen before many, many times. We've seen people rewrite the history, or want to rewrite the history of Europe. We've seen people want to rewrite the history of India. We've seen people want to rewrite the history of the Native Americans. We've seen people want to rewrite the history of African Americans. We've seen people want to rewrite these histories. And now that we live in the information age, it is impossible. It is impossible to hide the truth. There are just too many places from where you can get the truth. And I implore all of you to go to as many of these places to look at the truth and then assess for yourself, what is the truth? I'm not saying believe me. In fact, one of the things that I always say is, I don't want you to believe me. I don't want you to trust me. I want this to be a starting point, a thinking point for you to jump off and go and check what I'm saying to see the verity of what I'm saying. Am I telling you the truth? Figure it out by yourself by going out to the other sources. And part of that means to have books that tell the truth. It is about the truth. It is not about my truth or your truth. It is about the objective truth. And I've talked about fake news, and I've talked about false narratives. And I think that this dialogue, this ongoing phenomenon that's happening about books is one of those places where you can look at to see how certain people are changing history as a matter of nefarious purpose, and others who are registering and memorializing history that is ever evolving. There's the story in this books segment, the idea that books of same-sex couples, children's books, is somehow an aberration would be to say that sexual minorities are an aberration. That would be attacking, that would be persecuting and discriminating against a whole minority population. It has never been what our country and our Constitution has been about. Our country and our Constitution has been an incremental step towards expanding individual rights and expanding the promise of a more perfect union. It is not to change history, to rewrite it with a false history of something that is not true. You see, it is true that there are same-sex couples and that their children go to school, because those children will tell you that they have two dads or two moms. It's not true that the 2020 election was stolen, because there is no proof in the courts. There's no proof that has been accepted by investigators and by the courts and ruled. No election commission, even to this day, has said that there has been election fraud significant enough to cause any change, even to this day. In fact, very recently, the AG or somebody of Wisconsin or something, Donald called them in order to talk about the 2020 election. And even to this day, he continues. And even to this day, Ginni Thomas and people like Ginni Thomas think that the election is stolen, absent any credible proof of it. But Kash Patel decides to make a book out of it to inundate children. You see how those two are different? And the books about what's happening with Donald Trump, I'm sure a lot of them mean well. I'm sure all of them are capitalists wanting to cash in on this moment because this is the moment. But I would ask you to please wait. Please focus all your energy on directing your audience into watching and rewatching the January 6th committee hearings, to go into understanding what they are saying and connecting those dots, not in talking about small details about how he was with staff, how he was racist, how he was transphobic. We all know these to be true. Uh, like I talked in the beginning of this segment about Mr. Denver Riggleman's book. And his book, a lot of people have said negative things about. What I will tell you is one of the most important pieces of information that I got, that I didn't know before, was that Donald Trump Jr. was the first one to text Mark Meadows of the fake elector scheme, which shows, which is a smoking gun for an overt act in furtherance of Donald Trump's seditious conspiracy by Donald Trump Jr. That is set in stone. And I don't know if people heard that. I never heard that before, but that was something that was revealing to me. That was something that was information that was useful to me. That maybe even information that the DOJ might want to know about if they didn't have. I think they may have it by now. I think Mark Meadows Mark Meadows is cooperating with the January 6th committee. So Mark Meadows, now DOJ has all of those. Uh, okay. Now, the last topic I want to talk to you about is something that is completely unrelated, and that is sex work. You know, I have been from a very young age a big fan of Jesus. Jesus Christ is a really cool guy. And one of the stories about him is him defending a prostitute. And that story right there is two-pronged information right there, is that sex work has been a profession for at least that long, and that people should be given the dignity to choose what they wish to do, and that triple prong. We are in no position to judge others of what they're doing until we judge ourselves. Big caveat there is that the person engaging in sex work has to do so consensually. They have to be in a state of mind which modern society um, chalks up to being at least 18 years of age to be able to consent to doing sex work, because anything short of that is sex trafficking and human trafficking, and those are crimes. Somebody who is over the age of maturity, 18, and chooses sex work, whether man or woman, that is their choice. They should be given rights. They should be paid a fair wage. They should be paid a living wage. And they should not be demeaned or stigmatized because of the work that they do. Those who perpetuate sex trafficking and those who traffic poor girls and girls from developing countries and girls from kidnapped girls from rural and poor neighborhoods all around the world and in the United States, that's a crime. That is heinous. That is that should be dealt with in the harshest possible way that the law allows. And I just wanted to put that out there because, like, people get trafficked, even to this day when slavery is abolished, people are trafficked. Even to this day, people exploit others. And we're seeing a time on earth that is just so volatile and so unstable in so many ways. And we are seeing authoritarians and the big the people who are in control, the people who have power, they get a sinister pleasure or have a reckless apathy for the regard of the in for the small people, for the common people. And that is not any different than it has been in many other times in history before. But I think that this time around, we have the ability to see the truth, to speak the truth, and find connections amongst ourselves and rise up as reasonable people moving forward towards a more perfect union, a republic, a democracy that is for the people, by the people, of the people, where the rule of law maintains law and order, where history and tradition means something. Donald Trump broke the history and tradition of the United States of having a peaceful transition of power. A 230 plus odd years of tradition, history and tradition of a peaceful transfer of power, and Donald Trump broke that tradition. The Constitution still remains. We are still a strong republic, and we will endure this attack on our republic, but we will be broken and we will be mended. It won't be like before. And we all have to participate in this mending. So, with that, I'd like to say thank you to the people who have been here. Let me see if there've been. Oh, um, RR, hi, how are you? I was suspended. I will talk about this a little bit more once the final determination is made, but the suspension was because somebody reported or Twitter determined that me saying that Kyle Young deserves every day of his 86-month sentence for assaulting and attacking Officer Michael Fanone violated their Twitter rule policy of not being harassing, abusing, or inciting others to do so. I've appealed it on the basis that my statement that Kyle Young deserves his 86-month, every day of his 86-month sentence is a declarative statement that doesn't harass anybody. It states a fact, and that many others on Twitter have said exact same thing. I have followed their procedures, and it has now been about 36 hours, and they haven't responded. So I will just keep going uh, and see where this goes. Yeah, I don't know if Ginni Thomas is delusional. Um, I think she's about as delusional as any psychopath would be, or any fundamentalist extremist would be, but definitely not delusional enough to um, escape liability if there is proof that she took overt steps in furtherance of the insurrection and the seditious conspiracy. What the DOJ will consider to be sufficient overt act uh, in order to meet the burden of beyond a reasonable doubt, that the DOJ will decide. But they're all delusional to a certain degree, but none of them are delusional enough to not stand trial and be incarcerated. Okay. So thank you very much. And that'll be the end of this episode. Goodbye.